Okay. So I would like to start with kind of a map of where our current projects are. I'll get into further detail here in a minute on a project-by-project basis, but I wanted to kind of refresh where we had come from the last transportation CIP planning workshop to today. We have Paradise Road, which is under design. We had identified Shangri-La Road kind of as a long-term, probably bike ped project for the future. It's not currently sitting in our CIP as a standalone item, but as a potential. We had extended the old 41 project, which had been identified really as from Rosemary Creek south to the Terry Street roundabout. At the last transportation workshop, we kind of identified looking at it up to Shangri-La Road, which is near where the Center of the Arts is. That's more of a mid-range project. It is sitting in our CIP, but the funding is further out and would probably need more funding than we've currently identified. We have the Rosemary Park project, which is fully funded in our CIP. We were fortunate to receive $1.4 million from the state legislature. That will be going to construction here, and I'll talk a little more detail about it upcoming. We have the South Side Terry Street sidewalk that's under design. The Pine Avenue kind of sidewalk expansion, multi-use path, which is fully designed. We're just waiting on some grant dollars that were tied up with some of the realignment that's happened at the federal level. And then we have the East Terry Street project, which is going to be going out to bid and under construction here in the upcoming months. And then we have Bonita Grand Drive, which is under construction. If you've been out there, you'll see that's a private-public partnership. Goodwin Street's still under design, and then we have upcoming design efforts on the Pennsylvania Arroyo corridor, Pennsylvania Arroyo Ragsdale corridor. I just want to reiterate some of the key components in these type projects. We usually look to enclose drainage because by enclosing the drainage, you can get more usable space for landscaping, lighting, pedestrian improvements, and even roadway improvements, expansions. The drainage is a key component. It can be quite expensive, but we also look to create physical separation when we're doing pedestrian projects. And physical separation, is achieved in a couple of different ways. You have a height separation, right, which is delineated by the curb, which kind of, if someone does come off the roadway, it gives them a sharp reminder that maybe they need to get back on the roadway and not near the pedestrian facilities. And we also look to create separation from the actual travel lanes, distance-wise. So we try to create that vertical separation with the curb, and then also lateral separation from the roadway. Once we incorporate those, we also generally try to include landscape and hardscape. Landscaping provides shade and also another type of separation, right? If a car does venture off the road and you have a landscape buffer, that can be a reminder. But also just helps build out the vision that's laid out in our comprehensive plan of shaded, bikeable, pedestrian-friendly walkways. Hardscape features, as we approach the downtown, we do have benches and trash receptacles. You'll probably see more of those in some of our upcoming project components. So I'm going to get into the details, and these projects are going to bounce really between two types of expansion. One is expansion really of pedestrian facilities. That can be pedestrian and bicycle. That can be bike lanes. It can be wider sidewalks or sidewalks where we didn't have them. And then we have expansion of just new road corridors. So I'm going to talk, we have limited opportunities for this. We're going to talk about those two types of projects. Generally, that's what happens here in Bonita when we're talking about transportation. So the Goodwin and Rosemary projects, as I mentioned before, they're both designed. Goodwin Street is one of the oldest corridors in the city. It's very narrow, and we've had a pedestrian unfortunately be hit and killed, and as well as bicyclists get injured. along that corridor. So it has no pedestrian facilities, it has no sidewalk, it has no bike lane, it has no nothing. And so that project is looking to retrofit an 8-foot sidewalk on one side of the road and a 6-foot on the other, create the curbing, landscaping, and lighting that's like what we have in the downtown area to extend that corridor from Matheson to Old 41. To do it, we do need right-of-way. So the plans have identified the right-of-way needs, and we have been in a very deliberate review with our legal team who acquires right-of-way to make sure that we've had the least amount of impact on the property owners to achieve the desired improvements. So we're reviewing that closely. There'll probably be a couple of modifications we'll bring to the project, and then we will enter the final right-of-way phase, most likely in the winter time, probably after the new year, where we will be coming back in front of council with our legal team and making a final recommendation of offers and start the legal proceedings for condemnation. Once that happens, it will take a solid year before construction can really begin on this project. And it's just a function of how much right-of-way we need in this old corridor, and we're really taking our time to make sure that we've minimized that impact as much as possible. So the design is complete. Most all of the permitting is complete, but we're in this detailed review. Rosemary Drive is far simpler. We're building within the city's existing right-of-way. There is a 5-foot sidewalk in that neighborhood, but really there's far more pedestrians, folks on e-bikes, folks walking, using the corridor to get to school and work. And so in the end, this project is a 10-foot path on the south side of the road and a 6-foot sidewalk on the north with an F curb, as well as a landscape buffer and lighting on the south side. It's fully designed. We are waiting on the funding contract from the state that we received this summer, the announcement of. We cannot do any construction activities until we have that funding agreement in place. It'll come back before council. I expect that any day now. We just got the one for the beaches this week.
How much is it for?
1.4 million. The whole project is a little bit more. I think it's about $7 million project.
Yeah.
So we really can't do any construction or construction-related activity till we get that money. I expect it will happen either, before Christmas or quite possibly just right after. But this is usually the time frame we get those funding agreements from the state. Once that happens, we'll bid the project and move into construction. I would say that construction is likely to start late spring of 2026. We'll go back. The key components, I mentioned the sidewalk on both sides of the road. We also have speed tables and a complete resurfacing of Rosemary Drive. The roadway is in need of that as well, so that's included in this project. Bonita Beach Road, US 41 Northwest Quadrant roadway. This project has been a long time in planning and design. We have the design complete. We have our permits as well, other than one minor one from FDOT, but we have the major water management district permit, which was a key permit we received earlier this summer. We have been in an ongoing discussion with the owners of the shopping center over some small pieces of right-of-way that we require from them. We have a draft agreement that identifies a transfer of those small properties in exchange for some stormwater treatment that we have excess capacity for in the roadways design. And they just have to work through their tenants to make sure that all of their tenants are in agreement with the modifications we've made. We've gone through a few rounds of that type of back and forth. Had correspondence as recently as Monday, asking them, when can we expect the final agreement to come forward. We have an agreement in principle. They have it. It's been reviewed by some of their legal team. It's been reviewed by Derek. We're just waiting on the final kinks to get that worked out. In the event that doesn't happen in the near term, we are also taking steps concurrently to eminently domain it through condemnation. Ideally, we'll be able to finalize this agreement, though, because it would be a more beneficial route for both parties.
Timeline estimate on,
I would have told you a year ago that we'd be under construction.
it's just waiting on them to say yes. And
Mm-hmm. At some point, you know, we may be in a decision process where we say, look, we've exhausted the back and forth, and we really recommend moving into condemnation. And that point is coming closer and closer. But we have had an open dialogue all summer, and I have no reason to believe that we're negotiating in bad faith. It's just
this shopping center seems okay. Is it just like major tenants maybe holding it up, or?
there was a little bit of that, but we've made some minor tweaks. We actually made a couple of rounds of minor tweaks to the access ports that we had designed to accommodate those concerns. It just takes them a while to get those comments and then to communicate them to us. So they're kind of on a weekly list of mine to reach out to, have been all summer, and sometimes we have pretty good dialogue, but we're really at a point of finality here.
And Nigel?
Yeah, Matt, the eminent domain issues, and I want to word this as gracefully as you did. How many parcels are involved? How many?
Three.
Three?
Well,
Are they all outside entities?
three and one that is infinitesimally small. So it's technically it's four.
Are they all part of the plaza, or are they, okay. So we're only dealing with one entity?
Yes.
of the three, okay.
Yes.
To clarify, we're no longer dealing with the developer that was.
Correct. We own the majority of the right of way.
There's a new shopping plaza.
Owner?
Not as new anymore, but newer shopping plaza owner that has been making some changes to that whole plaza in tenants and in updates to the plaza. And that's who we have to deal with. The actual developer who was developing the adjacent property is no longer a part of these issues.
And none of the parcels are part of the, I want to call it the old fishing village, it's now the rental apartments?
No, so we own that. We own the lion's share, and I apologize. It's not easy to see on this right away, or on this map, but the city owns the majority of what is needed. We own where this pond is. That is city property in the roadway. The pieces that we're talking to the shopping center about are literally small triangular pieces in these two corners here, as well as the access roadway that comes in off of US 41. And a really infinitesimally small piece over here that has to do with a light fixture. It's like the foundation for a light fixture. So, all right, well, this isn't going to work. So, we've had a very healthy and robust discussion about it throughout the summer. They've received some feedback from their clients, about turning radiuses for trucks. We've made those modifications to our plans in good faith and said, look, at the start of the late spring, we had the agreement going back and forth. Derek worked a little bit on it. I worked on it. So we had the transfer agreement is pretty well, I believe, agreed upon, the language thereof. It was just they wanted to see some modifications to our design that allowed better ease of access for their clients in the terms really of turning radiuses. And we've made those changes, and we keep saying, okay, well, where are you on giving us an inked agreement?
So follow up to the mayor's point, when do you think we would see something along the lines of fences that the public would say, oh, they're doing something?
I would have told you a year ago that this road would be under construction.
But now,
If we don't, if Christmas comes and goes and we don't have an agreement, I think we will need to be in front of you with our legal team talking about condemning the property. And that is a year delay from that point.
that's a shame.
Jim?
You reach the agreement by Christmas or first quarter. The timeline for completion is approximately a couple of years, 3 years? What's the?
I'd say this is probably a 2-year project. The
Okay.
the complication, if I could, is this going to work? It's not going to work. I'll just go with the cursor. The area, the construction across here is very simple. It's greenfield construction. It will not You don't have active traffic there primarily. It will be very easy to build. Logan Boulevard was very similar. You didn't have people driving up the Logan corridor. That construction didn't take very long. This piece, which I can't see very well because I need glasses, but this piece is complicated. This is on Bonita Beach Road. We have it permitted through Lee County, so that is a key component. It is a single lane displaced left intersection. And so that construction could be more complicated within that 2-year span, but primarily the road, it won't take that long.
So essentially that, keeping our fingers crossed, would be looking at something that would be out, available, and in use in 2028.
Yeah.
Okay.
The right-of-way is taking longer.
Yep.
And it's a shopping center, and we are following our legal team's advice, which is if you can strike a deal, it's in the city's best interest to strike a deal. The deal points, there appears to be no real banter back and forth that that we're miles apart in terms. It's just been they have multiple tenants. They have individual entities that are reviewing. When we get the feedback, we make the feedback changes within a week and provide it back, and then start hounding with emails, when can we expect this? But there may be a point where we say, look, we've been at this long enough, but the legal advice is really, if we can, it's in our best interest to pursue a settlement outside of the court system.
Is the estimated cost of $13 million still a good bogey?
I think it is. It has been updated with our engineer. I've added some percentage for inflation. So that's based off of an engineer's estimate, based off of our 90% plan. So it's not, it wasn't designed in a vacuum. We're not at a planning level estimate. We are adding some inflationary numbers, and hopefully some of these construction prices will get a little more competitive as well. I think we're starting to see that, quite honestly.
It was also updated in preparation of each of the budget cycles. So when new information was provided, we're getting prepared to present budget. It was updated at those times.
So, okay, so basically, the net, it's been inflation adjusted. Other than normal surprises, $13 million is a good planning number.
It's been inflation adjusted. It's been adjusted to a final design. So you have a more definitive quantities. If you were at a 30% plan, it's a higher level of an estimate. So you have a tighter level of an estimate. We've adjusted for inflation. So it's from our perspective, it's been adjusted every year. It's as close as you can be.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so are we ready for the next one? All right, so we have two more. Well, this is really about West Terry Street, and I'll talk about Paradise in the next slide. We have another project, West Terry Street South Sidewalk. We had a workshop in the fall of 2024 that was very well attended. We received a lot of feedback. I would say it was a mixed feedback that we received, but we held the meeting. The 60% plans we received October 1st this year. I've been reviewing those and have actually forwarded them to our legal right-of-way team because what's going on here is, it's easier for me to command this here. This is the right-of-way line in blue, in the city's blue. The red, I highlighted the red, that is the sidewalk. So Terry Street would be over here. This is the bike lane of Terry Street. Cut a curb in. This is the sidewalk. This is the existing ground here in the dashed line. When we build projects, we cannot trap stormwater on private property. Regardless of whether we built anything on private property, we cannot do that. So what you're seeing here is within the design, we're having to move that ditch, in this case southerly, and recreate it. And in this slide, you see with the red arrow, that would require additional right-of-way. So that would be a condemnation proceeding. In addition, you see this proposed temporary construction easement. You don't ever want to take more than you need. But sometimes to build what you have to build, you need a little bit for a small period of time. You need the ability to access someone's property, to lay a piece of sod, to get the grading right. So that's what a temporary construction easement provides for. A large portion of the project, as it stands, does not require right-of-way. So this slide that's the good news. But a significant portion of it requires reconstruction of drainage swales away from the existing right-of-way, which is what this slide's indicating. And currently it's shown as a temporary construction easement in these 60% plants. The reality is, depending on the severity of this ditch, it's likely to need to be a true drainage easement, which you would need to go through a condemnation proceeding for. So we're evaluating it for that, and we'll be talking to you about what those impacts are and what that looks like. But the bottom line is the sidewalk is able to be constructed within the city's right-of-way, but the impacts of it that you have to address are going to require some form of easement, permanent in most cases, sometimes temporary, and a little bit of right-of-way. And so we're trying to evaluate that, see if there are any places where maybe you can phase the project, but it's not like Rosemary Park where you can build it straight within the city's right-of-way.
Nigel?
Yeah, Matt, there's at least 4 streets, which I know along West Terry where there are drainage systems that have been there for 30, 40 years, where they actually come out 100, 150 feet south of West Terry. So where they'll actually come out past the first 1 or 2 homes and then just drain into, looks like, the roadway. What happens to those? And that's private property, right? So now what happens there?
I without knowing the specifics, what I can tell you is, the water here, if you look at these, the water here was moving. Here it was in the right-of-way in this image. Here it's really not. The swale is shown exterior to the right-of-way. Once we make these improvements, we have to account for this water. So this water, ultimately what would happen to this water in these reconstructed swale systems is you went down the line, there's a drainage pipe, in places along this roadway. We would intercept that water and move it into those drainage pipes, or we would move it laterally along the roadway into an outfall that was a city outfall or something that it historically flowed into.
So we're not going to have to go after homes or
No. It's a little deceiving when you look at this. If you don't know what the implications are of this, we're going to need the ability to construct that, and you have to, you're going to have to compensate people for that, which is where eminent domain comes into play, which, as we've talked about now in a couple slides, is once we get into that final phase, that's a year. So we're evaluating this. I was hopeful that maybe there would be opportunities where we didn't have any of these conditions, where we could say, look, you can go build this piece. That's not the case with the way it looks. You may notice, and I don't want, this is a 2-foot buffer. I mentioned that we look for buffers on the roadway, and I was thinking, well, what if we lose this buffer and push the sidewalk straight to the curb? But the issue is, when you build a sidewalk, you need a 2-foot flat spot before you have a slope. So if
I'm sorry, Matt, 2 foot.
2-foot flat, so someone doesn't fall off, right? Or you need a railing. So if you look, if you lost this 2 feet and shoved this over to the motoring public, right, which is not really what we try to do, you still don't gain. You still need a 2-foot flat spot. That's 2 foot, and you still need to reconstruct this. So you're still in the need of having to reconstruct the drainage infrastructure. So it doesn't seem like a beneficial to try and augment the design that way. But we're looking at this. It's a complicated project. These are all the retrofit projects, and they're all complicated.
And I think, to be clear, we just want to reiterate that the cost that's planned for in this
It's gonna go
budget is not the final cost. These will have to be updated as we move forward with more information. So we don't want to promise that that's the cost in any way.
Okay, oh, next one. Hopefully this one is far more simple. This is Paradise Road, and where we are, we have an executed design contract. The designer has conducted an extensive amount of survey work in the area along Paradise Road. This goes from Shangri-La Road all the way north to the end of Paradise Road. They are looking at what concepts can be fit into the existing right-of-way. So we have by and large, a 60-foot wide right-of-way there. We recently closed on one of the large stormwater ponds that was built as part of the regional drainage project. So there are portions along the west side of the right-of-way where not only does the city have the 60-foot wide right-of-way, it's going to have some additional right-of-way from the ponds that it acquired, which probably gives us a little more flexibility. The running mandate, other than at the intersection of Shangri-La Road for this project, is we feel we have enough right-of-way to fit these facilities. Do not try and design outside of the existing right-of-way and city property ownership, because we don't feel that you need to, and that way it keeps you out of right-of-way acquisition. Now, it does include the possibility for a roundabout, and I have no feedback as to what the thought process is yet. But if they do look at a roundabout at Shangri-La Road and Paradise Road, you certainly would need right-of-way in small pieces in those corners, because the intersections are just not laid out to be able to accommodate that with their current platting. So the designer has taken the survey work. These are loose concepts. There are many more than this that they are trying to kind of get their head around. What we plan on is public workshops starting in the first quarter of 2026, probably early in the first quarter of 2026, and presenting to the public cross sections like this and others for various links to the project, and get some feedback on what the public wants to see in that neighborhood. One of the ways that we've been getting a lot of people to come to our public workshops, and I think will work very well in this instance, is we'll put up those road messaging signs that say, put them out a week or two in advance, public workshop, this date, such and such. And we're looking for public feedback on this, because we see some opportunities to phase it. We see some opportunities I don't think it's a one-size-shoe-fits-all in terms of what you build. I think there's a definitive change in character along the roadway when you go north of Maddox Lane. And so we're going to be looking for the public to give us some feedback on that.
Great.
Okay. These are FDOT projects. I just wanted to give you a couple of important updates. The first one is in what I have the image of. That is what FDOT will be ultimately bringing to design at the US 41 Bonita Beach Road intersection. They include the city's roadway. This part is on us. They will modify it a little bit, and then they're looking at what is called a displaced left on the main lines of US 41. They completed the PD&E process last year, March of 26. Actually, they probably completed it by the fall, because there's some transmittals that have to happen. And they have moved into the design phase. So they were soliciting designers in July, and they plan on wrapping that up by the end of this month. They have shortlisted designers to 3 firms. They did that, I think, in September. And then from what I understand, by the end of November, they will have selected an engineering firm to design this solution. Now, that will take a few years. They have right-of-way acquisition in this that is far more significant than anything I've talked about, but that sets that project in motion. The other project that FDOT was studying was Old 41 and Bonita Beach Road, and they held the public meeting back in April of 2022. They had 2 kind of general concepts, and what happens at the public hearing is they take that information, feedback they received off the 2 concepts, they look at it further, and they come back with a single concept, and that's what the public hearing is. That already happened for US 41. That is now going to happen for Old 41 and Beach Road. And it's going to happen November 20th, right here in sunny Bonita Springs at our rec center. 26740 Pine Avenue. And it's going to happen in the evening. I believe it starts at 4:30 at the rec center and runs till 7, if my memory serves me correctly. So there's more information available at the website I've shown there. And I encourage folks to come to the meeting and find out. I'll be there. Okay. East Terry Street. We've estimated this project about $20 million. The designs are complete. The permits are complete. It is a drainage project with some significant roadway features, namely a traffic signal at Southern Pines, a roundabout at Morton Avenue, and an additional turn lane as you're headed westbound on East Terry Street as you approach Imperial Parkway, where there is a noticeable backup that occurs. We believe that turn lane will help. We leveraged the stormwater money that we received from the governor, and then we were able to secure another $2.8 million from FDOT to build some of the pedestrian improvements, because there'll be a 10-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road, and I believe a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side of the road, or multi-use path. 10 foot's multi-use path. Landscaping and lighting. So where the project is the FDOT money comes with exceptional strings, which will require some extensive monitoring, so we have to solicit outside monitoring. That solicitation has been drafted and has been submitted to FDOT this week for review. It was a 1,000-page document. Actually, that wasn't a 1,000-page document. I'm sorry. The bid package was 1,000 pages. But that document, nonetheless, was submitted to FDOT for review. The bid package, which is what we will advertise to construction companies to bid the work, is concurrently being reviewed. It's 1,134 pages, if I remember right. That has been submitted to FDOT for review, and it has been submitted to the Florida Department of Commerce. Florida Commerce, who is the representative of the CBDG funding. So they both have to review those documents before we put it out on the street to advertise it. The plan right now is, if we get responses, and we have a very talented person who is asking them daily as to when they will get a response. If we get a response here within a week or so, we will put those out to bid, and they'll have to be out on the street for about 30 days. Well, they have to be out on the street for 30 days. If the reviews take longer, we will run into kind of a log jam with the Thanksgiving and holiday season. And it's been our experience, you don't really get good bid results if you let something linger across the holidays, because the folks just don't give you a number. So if we don't get responses from the two reviewing agencies within the next week or so, we will probably forestall advertising those for construction contractors until after the new year. It'll have to advertise for about a month. Once we get those results back, we'll come back to City Council, and I would say we're on track to have a construction start in the spring of 2026. This is absolutely 2 years worth of misery for the motoring public, because it's a substantial series of improvements. I will talk a little bit more about it on the drainage side, but there are large diameter pipes, crossings, and things going on. So folks that have been traveling through, we've received feedback from some of our neighbors to the north that, there's construction going on Bonita Grand. They haven't seen anything yet. Pennsylvania Avenue corridor and drainage. This is
Matt, real
Yes,
quick
sir.
to clarify, so the earliest would see construction starting is mid-26 with approximately a 2 to 3 year construction time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair. We're pushing it as fast as we can. The good news is we're fully permitted. The other good news is that the 2.8 million kind of came not out of nowhere. We'd had a placeholder for years, but the moon and the stars aligned, so we were able to bring that money to bear. The unfortunate news with that is it really is a cumbersome process, but we're going to work through it.
Oh, Matt, the bridge, though, I want to make sure so we have had some preliminary conversations with Representative Botana about the possibility of some placemaking, understanding about the bridge over 75. Many communities have a partnership with FDOT to put signage or placemaking, so we did start the conversation with that with the hopes that the state would be able to help us with some funding of that and design.
But
Clarify what the ask is.
We haven't designed anything yet. It's just that several communities have either the name or a design or something that is more of a branding opportunity on the actual bridge of the Terry Street Bridge over 75.
So
Many communities on the East Coast, Orlando, sometimes that's also done through tourist development funds. There's different opportunities to actually provide a branding opportunity on the bridge and there might be an opportunity for us to look at our placemaking as well.
And my understanding is that when the I-75 project gets going, there's no intent to replace that bridge as part of that project, correct?
my understanding is they don't answer that at the level where they are with the PD&E study currently. As they move to design, like I talked about 41 and Bonita Beach Road, now they're moving into design. That's when they start to figure out, we need to replace the bridge, or no, we don't. And I'm sure if they're anything like people that work for us, we will, they'll try to not replace it, but we'll see.
So do we have any justification to request that?
I don't know. What I can tell you is what this project will do is we will end up putting an 8-foot wide path on the south side of the overpass. The railing, there'll be a railing that prevents vehicles from being able to hit the walking public. The railing will be something you're probably accustomed to if you've driven over the old 41 bridge in downtown Bonita. It's the first railing, which is a box tubing. We also have it on West Terry Street at the railroad track, and and at Oak Creek when you first come into Old 41. So that creates a physical barrier to prevent vehicles from bumping into it. The other thing that will occur is we will modify, I think Nigel was aware of this, there is no fencing over that overpass, and that's...
It's the most dangerous pedestrian overpass.
Yeah. So that will be addressed, that's addressed in the design. So there'll be a fencing so that people can't throw things over, that kind of recurves back in, and we're probably powder coated, an appealing color, either the blue or...
But it will mitigate some of the risk of the amount of bicycles and e-bikes going across that.
It will, it will provide a much safer conduit for them because they'll have a physical barrier that is doweled into that bridge deck so that, if someone loses control of their vehicle, as long as they're walking on that side, right? Mm-hmm. And it will provide safety for the people on the interstate because the fencing will be replaced. But it will not be as appealing as what Arlene's talking about. We've been talking to Representative Botana, in the future about something.
For example, in Collier County, they have decorative, embossments or different cost savings ideas to make it
I just
more
want to make sure,
placemaking.
literally in the morning and in the evening, there are literally dozens of bikers and e-bikes that are crossing that bridge.
Yep.
In a very precarious way.
Yeah, it will. As long as they use what we build, it will provide a much safer pathway for them.
You're talking about possibly being able to incorporate the branding as part of that
Correct.
safety structure.
Correct.
And protecting some of the seniors that walk there several times a week.
Sure. FDOT had to review what we have. So what we're going to build is bare bones. I think it's a follow-on project to really make it look beautiful. We will be able to put some of our colors, maybe the blue on the railing or the blue on the fencing and white on the railing, vice versa. The blue like Councilwoman Carr's shirt. Anyway, or whatever color you... Pennsylvania Avenue Corridor, this is a very similar project. I'm going to sound like a broken record on the stormwater both of these projects are really stormwater projects. The money really came from stormwater, but they are opportunities to do transportation improvements. In the case of Pennsylvania, it's probably more of a traffic calming and sidewalk type project. In the case of East Terry, we did bake in a few things, the signals, the roundabout, and the turn lanes that are, more operational improvements. We asked for 24 million. We received 21 million. Of that 21 million, we do have to pay for any impacts to Bonita Springs Utilities' existing infrastructure, which is not a typical thing for us. So, that can, depending on what the design impacts, we will have to pay for that in this project. Usually BSU pays for that. The design services are under negotiation. A designer was recommended to council. He asked us to negotiate a contract. We've been talking about the scope. I was on a meeting about it yesterday, and we're looking for the scope and fee, and we'll work through that. The fee does have to be reviewed not only by City Council, but by the funding agency, which is through Lee County. I mentioned before we had to send it to Florida Commerce. That was an earlier CBDG grant. This is the CBDG grant that came from Hurricane Ian, in which Lee County, not the state of Florida, is kind of the purse string controller. So they'll have to review those prices, and we'll work with the designer, and at some point, hopefully before the new year, we will come back to you with a design contract and then start with public input. This will be a huge public input project as well.
Any concerns there, Matt, with the county?
I don't know. We'll see what the price is. I'm sure there'll be some going back and forth. I think this is a great project for the city. It may be one that, if we have dollars available and if you're interested, it may be one that pulls, more money from the city, to finish it out. There might be issues that, we don't have enough grant dollars, or the grant dollars can't deal